So, for people that are listening that might still be questioning, how is there a relationship and how is there a connection between the gut and the brain?
Mm,
Can you explain that a little bit more? I was so fascinated in your book when you said that 90% of neurotransmitters are actually made in our gut.
yeah,
That's a
yeah.
staggering number to me.
I noticed that, there are certain, um, facts or, evidence that I'll cite to parents and to kids, that will get kind of the wide-eyed, like, "Really?" And that is one of them, right? When I tell them, "Look, the reason why we need to think about our gut microbiome, which, by the way, outnumbers, us in terms of cells, right? I mean, the hundreds of trillions of microorganisms in our microbiome, in our gut microbiome, and then we have, 10 times more microbial cells than human cells. So, I have them think of, Nemo and the anemone, right? I mean, they're kind of symbiotic. They need each other.
It's crazy what you're saying because there's 10 times as many bacterial cells in our body that there
Yep.
are our own human cells.
Yes.
And I think that's so
And
interesting because we're so conditioned to think that bacteria is a bad thing, but it's actually a
yeah,
necessity.
I love that you say that because especially coming out of the pandemic, we've been trained to think germs are bad, right? Like, bacteria, X, virus X, like, parasites X. But what's fascinating is it's I mean, there's never any clear-cut answer. And so we have all of these bacteria that are really good for us. We even have viruses that are really good for us in our gut microbiome, right? That we actually want in there. And even certain parasites that can be, I mean, some kids who grow up in farms and have more exposure to parasites, their immune system gets trained a different way and they're less likely to have allergies and asthma and eczema. So, I mean, it's not all bad, but in terms of, thinking about the gut brain connection, our gut microbiome has certain types of bacteria that are now called psychobiotics. So psycho for the brain, not in a negative way, but psychobiotics because they help support optimal neurotransmitter levels, like serotonin, which many of you know is the neurotransmitter that helps us stay relaxed and calm and manage stress and fall asleep. Well, that, 90% of all of our body's serotonin is made by our gut microbiome, those microbes, right? At least 50% of dopamine, which is what's implicated in ADHD, right? Focus, attention, even implicated in addictions. So 50% at least is made by our gut microbiome. Over 400 times the amount of melatonin is made in our gut than in our brain. And so then we have to think, all right, if we're anxious or we're having trouble focusing or we're having trouble sleeping, are we going to look for brain things to do? Well, yes, and we also need to look at the gut microbiome because if we're not supporting a healthy level, a healthy balance of the bacteria that will provide a healthy level of neurotransmitters for us, doesn't matter how many medications we take or even supplements we take. It's going to be an uphill battle. If we want to get to the root and help our bodies have optimal levels of neurotransmitters, we have to look at our microbiome.
A lot of people now are referring to the gut as our second brain.
hmm So yeah, and what's fascinating is our brain has these neurons, these cells called astroglia, and our gut has a nervous system of its entire own. Right? It's called the enteric nervous system, and those nerve cells look almost identical, very similar to our brain nerve cells, and they communicate, back and forth. What is so fascinating? Our gut's nervous system can live without our brain, but our brain cannot live without our guts, our enteric nervous system. I mean, so
Wow.
who are we calling the second brain, right? Like
Good
who's
point.
in charge here? I mean, we need to reframe. I mean, I tell this to kids, right? If you're thinking about like, I'm kind of, I'm bummed out or I'm really anxious. I just want to be happy. And they think that, bag of Takis or that, boba tea or whatever is going to make them happy temporarily, right, in the short run. Well, if they really want to be happy in the long run, think about what's going to make their gut microbiome happy, right? Because
Mhm.
that is what's going to make you have more lasting happiness than just that short term, instant gratification. I feel better for 5 minutes and then I'm back to back to being anxious again.